Hello everyone, my name is Klaus. I'm the CEO of Epista Life Science, and on behalf of Sejeka, Microsoft and Epista Life Science, I would like to play a pre-recorded webinar that we did last week. It's going to last for approximately 50 minutes, and then we will have a Q&A session after the webinar. So please stick around, and then we can have the Q&A session after that. Hello everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Always Compliant with Dynamics 365 for Pharma and Life Science. The purpose of our webinar today is to have a discussion where we kind of treat the subject around how do we do implementations, and specifically ERP implementations within the life science space. Some of you, at least I hope that some of you have been following this channel before, and also know that we have been talking a lot about this specific subject with Epista over time. And probably you also know that we've been working with ERP and validation for life sciences since 2009, and also specifically on Dynamics and Dynamics 365 FO. And you have heard us talk a lot about it in the past, that this transition to cloud has a big impact on the life science industry. You've heard us talk about the fact that we believe that when we use cloud-based solutions in life science, it actually is a major opportunity to make sure that we have correspondence between requirements and systems, since these forced changes to the systems basically means that we have to change. And as a consequence, in many ways, these cloud-based systems are better for us than is the case with on-prem systems. You probably also have heard us say something about that the paradigm of implementation are changing with the cloud, that these projects in the cloud or the new world very much become kind of preparatory for the operation to come, with all the forced changes we have there, and the mandatory that those changes are mandatory for us. And then I'm sure you've also heard us talk about the fact that if we look into the cloud transition and these forced changes on our companies, then we are looking at projects which are very much back to standard kind of projects. And all of this has made us think a lot about how do we do these implementations within life science, how do we make sure that we have compliance in place. And in Epista, we believe that that cloud-based systems should be seen in a context of what we call always compliant. And always compliant for us is a terminology which basically is supported by 4 core competencies that always needs to be in place when we're implementing advanced systems within life science. First and foremost, and the first word is a word we call process understanding. The importance of vendors, that being the software provider or the implementation partner, in understanding the life science business in terms of GMP, functional requirements, and what have you. Secondly, it's about knowing the accelerators that fits to this market. So any functionality that needs to be put on top of standard platforms and their relevance for life science in terms of functionality. And then, of course, everything in life science is about validation, the ability to efficiently do validation in a way so that we can support forced changes in configuration and also in changes. Last but not least, since this is let's say a moving world, we also need to be sure that we can maintain the validated state. As you know, the forced changes are coming into play in these cloud-based situations. So you've heard us say that before, and today we would like to discuss this subject from 3 different dimensions. And those 3 dimensions in total basically addresses these competencies of process understanding, accelerators, as well as validation and maintenance of the validated state. And we'll be talking about platforms, and we'll be talking more specifically about ERP systems. So this was a very long entry to the subject, and then today we are going to have I think we call it a roundtable discussion, and you can't really do roundtable discussions on a webinar unless that is virtual, and we're doing that today on Teams. And with me today I have Jesper Bay from Microsoft. And Jesper will be here today talking about the strategy of Microsoft towards life science. I'll try to ask him a couple of questions so we all get a perspective on where Microsoft is going in this industry. I have Dominic DeVos from Sejeka with me. Cegica is a system implementer, also on Dynamics 365 FO, based out of Belgium and Central Europe. And Dominic, and I'm not sure I should mention this, but has years of experience in the ERP space, and now not disclosing your age there, Dominic, but definitely a lot of experience around the ERP and life science, and I'm sure you will be happy to also to answer some questions regarding what we do on the accelerator side, as well as how we do an implementation of ERP. And last but not least, and I say that because Henrik Walter is a colleague of mine, and Henrik has also been working in the ERP space for 100 years at least, Henrik, and also have joined us here at Epista Life Sciences and have a good understanding of compliance and validation. And Henrik will basically be talking about how do we validate cloud-based systems, specifically ERP systems, and also more specifically Dynamics 365 FO. So it's my hope and also my belief that these guys can enlighten us from these three different perspectives on the subject in this, what I hope will become a very good roundtable discussion. So let's dig into it, or deep into it, and starting with you, Jesper, and talking about I think we all know that implementing systems within life science requires a lot of different things, but specifically it requires that we have standard software platforms that have been tested and developed in a good way, and basically that supports that we can validate and get the right functionality into life science companies. And now, as I said before, we've been working since 2009 in Epista with ERP specifically. And to me, it seems like Microsoft is becoming more and more successful in this industry. And I was just wondering, as Microsoft and Pharma, how does that look, and what are the focus areas that you're looking into right now in Microsoft?
Yeah, thank you, Klaus. And I being the only one that you didn't disclose the age of, then won't say how many years I've been working with life sciences. I would say that my name is Jesper, and I'm the global GXP lead in Microsoft, as well as an industry advisor. I've been supporting the life science industry for plus 20 years, and 10 of those plus only with cloud-based systems in the span of regulatory compliance challenges with the industry and using cloud-based tools. So my job is to work with the customers and partners and understand the challenges through different channels. One of them is an advisory board where which I host multiple quality leads from our pharma clients, investigating blockers, challenges, and how we can then overcome them as an industry. In Microsoft, we have a mission statement to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. That acts as a North Star in everything we do, and I'll get into some of those elements of enablement and how we see that and how we show up with our clients and our partners at our clients. So in these times of uncertainty in the world, and organizations are trying to do more with less, that means speed, more productivity, and more time to focus on what really matters. That's exactly the theme of today's webinar, I believe, to focus on what matters and to speed up and unlock the value of any data source, open platform, data estate, movement thinkings, and then seamlessly connect to your on-premise cloud-based third-party sources, using Microsoft Cloud to apply the industry, leading intelligence, unlocking, the insights, and protecting and govern your data across that entire stack. That is the enablement and the empowerment. When we then zoom into one of the industries today, the pharma life science, then yes, we've established an industry strategy that is about collaboration, strategic partnerships across the entire value chain. In our mission to empower the life science organization to achieve more across the value chain, Microsoft is becoming the trusted platform in research development, in commercial, in production, lab, as well as in other pharma life science related industry as payers, providers, medtech, and retail health. That means that we bring accelerated scale to Microsoft that empowers innovation, especially many parts are similar across the ecosystem. So we use our learnings in one industry applied in the other industry. And that's the power of having an ecosystem that goes abroad, the cloud tools that goes abroad, from Dynamics to M365 to Azure, based on the same compliance ecosystem, based on the same security principles, applying the security principles across, and then leveraging the tools to build up and get the insights. Microsoft has been supporting the industry in plus 35 years and have a wide set of capabilities and knowledge. We have industry teams that spans from both doctors, scientists, across industry focused people in all geos. We have a number of research centers where Microsoft scientists are working together with partners and clients to come up with new modalities, new ways of thinking, and so forth.
So thank you for disclosing the experience there with 20 plus, which gives you, the same experience as Dominic and Henrik has together. So thanks for that, Jesper. And thank you also for a very broad perspective on Microsoft and the thinking of Microsoft as it is right now. If we kind of focus in on the life science sector, do you see any specific traction in any specific areas of the industry with regards to your solutions, etc.?
Yes, I would say that what I briefly touched upon before in this uncertainty, COVID, and now with the economic certainties and difficulties in the world right now, we see a high level of traction towards solutions that are focused on efficiency, productivity, and compliance in every part of the pharma value chain. We are partnering with our customers and partners, of course, to co-develop, co-innovate code. Like I said, in our research centers, the underlying hardcore drivers, like we are seeing in research and development, coming up with new modalities and more that supports the precision health initiatives, and taking a more longer horizon lens on it. Which we're doing with customers like UCB, Novo Nordisk, and others on Science Engine, which has specific use cases in R&D, mainly, which is it's AI at massive scale to achieve more in the research and development. A number of clients have gone through DXP qualification of the underlying Azure infrastructure, which is also relevant for today's topic. The platform services such as Azure DevOps, the Power Platform, and Dynamics 365, like you are supporting and driving services upon, are now able to use those different platforms in a highly regulated areas also to achieve more. And multinational companies such as AstraZeneca, Takeda, Novo Nordisk have all been pioneering some of the usage of these technologies and qualification approaches, I would say, and validation approaches to drive more growth, to simplify shop floor operations, finance processes. As part of the mission, they have used both on-premise cloud-based platforms, augmented mixed reality solutions to design and improve processes in some of these in manufacturing facilities and in labs also. All while being GxP compliant. So switching from paper-based procedures is a large tractional area. This industry having a large amount of paper instructions are making it more involving for the actual shop floor and lab workers, which actually results in higher attrition or attraction, not higher attrition, a higher attraction of staff. Staying on, giving more responsibility, being part of it, not just IT that transforms business processes, but actual workers that are involved in it. which speeds up, time and, heighten quality by automating, looking at automation, looking at process redefinition and process architectures. Imagine researchers across the globe work on discovery and research of data in data collaboratives and, virtual augmented labs, leveraging confidential compute while securing IP. Today, we are seeing the need to shifting data estates to cloud in order to leverage the vast amount of capabilities like, analytics, machine learning, AI, ChatGPT. It's never been greater than now. And many customers are thinking twice about, for instance, the ERP renewals, which is coming up gradually. And is it still the right choice to stay on premise with the capabilities in cloud-based solutions? Now is perhaps the time to evaluate that choice. And the greater use cases of cross-platform capabilities, which I also touched upon, is where the benefits are seen now. Customers have moved part estate to Azure, seen some of the technical capabilities in there, and are now seeing the benefit reaping with Dynamics 365 using the same underlying compliance and security framework. And eventually that is shorter time to market.
Fantastic, and always good to hear a Microsoft person talk about vision and using their software. But I think equally for me as a quality person, interesting to hear a Microsoft person say compliance, validation, and GXP in the same sentence. And I think to me that also shows a movement from Microsoft on this subject. And now being a pedantic quality guy like I am, I'm going to hold you a little bit onto that, Jesper, because looking into the subject of validation, compliance, and so on. I mean, from a Microsoft standpoint, looking at your customers, looking out in the partner landscape, looking around the total entire ecosystem, what would the recommendation from Microsoft be on stuff like compliance and validation and all that?
So it's really around partnerships. Microsoft is a partner-driven organization. It's about building assets to enable the organizations to both understand and leapfrog so that they don't need to do the same again and again. It's about shifting into a cloud-based approach, like we talked about, exploring the vast capabilities and possibilities. We need to make sure that we are still in control of the platform and changes that happen. We need to shift into a more agile approach when we need to think about that platform change and platform qualification. Start treating everything as code. Cloud is code. So use code principles, leveraging the broader suite of tools and capabilities. Not just think about the Dynamics 365 ERP system as the system of choice to be involved in a business process, but thinking of the changes that happen and the control of changes that happen and needs to happen. Can leverage tools like Azure DevOps, Purview, data, AI, and analytics, the services of the other parts of Microsoft clouds like Azure to support the platform services. You can use Azure services to govern, monitor, and secure those while ensuring the policies enforcement from an industry perspective, as well as controlling the blueprints, always testing principles and storing the documentation in the platform with traceability and accountability and logging enabled. Documentation attached to code doesn't need to be, printed out and stored. It needs to be in a place where it's accountable, traceable, and secure and available. We need to make sure that we establish a high level of governance. So shifting into a platform always on approach, all evergreen approach needs a higher level of governance and standardization. And that's key. I know I speak and I talk to a lot of quality responsible leads in the pharmaceutical, and they all acknowledge the fact that standardization and automation and control drives actually a higher level of quality. So we need to step into that agile approach and going away from quality by design into more driving it as as policy-driven automatic testing enforcing approach, eventually, driving lower costs, which automation, have proven again and again. Like I said, Microsoft is a partner-driven organization, and partners like you, Epista and Cegica are working on exactly that, enabling our customers to achieve more, which was the end here through their work with Dynamics 365 and the compliance.
It's great, and again, great to hear that there is this compliance perspective also from Microsoft, and coming back to our 4 points of process understanding, validation, maintaining the validated state, as well as accelerators. I think that looking at that process understanding and knowing that Microsoft is serious about this, that you're looking into, Jesper, basically the tools that can support the compliance and being visionary about that, I think is a very good thing for the industry. So thank you very much for enriching our view, or your view on that for all of us.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
You are not gone yet, so I hope you stay around for the questions and answers, because there will be some questions that I might be very difficult for me to answer, definitely.
Sure.
So speaking of that process understanding, knowledge of accelerators, validation and maintaining the validated state, Microsoft understands obviously the platform and the process knowledge that is required to develop software, but that's not only that. When we do implementation of advanced systems like ERP, system implementation partners should definitely also contribute with some of this. And I don't know, Dominic, whether you can hear that I'm going into your direction. Your queue is shortly up, because you've been working in the ERP space for a long time, for years actually, and with Cegica, I know that you've been looking into this opportunity of, standard functionality from Microsoft is great, but there is a small gap maybe towards the requirements that we see from the industry. And I know that you have been investing heavily in Cegica in developing ISVs modules to support that. Can you elaborate maybe, Dominic, a little bit? What's the story here? What is the gap that you're trying to address? What is it Cegica wants to achieve with building these ISVs for the industry?
Thanks for the question, Klaus, and the introduction. Well, when I have been talking to our customers in pharma life science industry, all of these customers asked to me, Dominic, okay, how will Cegica allow me to transition to the cloud in a kind of fully connected way? But most of all in an always compliant environment. And since it is crucial to this type of industry, we knew that Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management came out of the box already being FDA compliant, GxP compliant, which is of course a great advantage. What we did over the past couple of years is we gathered the industry specific requirements by means of also recruiting people coming out of the pharma life science industry within our Cegica teams, talking the same language of our customers, and then went on looking on the market, okay, are there any ISV solutions which are closely integrated with Dynamics 365, which can cover these industry specific requirements? We noticed that there were some ISV solutions, but they only partly covered these specific requirements. So that's why we decided to develop our own solution on top of Dynamics 365, which is fully embedded in Dynamics 365. So we followed all of the guidelines presented by Microsoft regarding type of development, security setup, whatever, so that our solution has been approved to be published also on the portal, the Microsoft portal, which is called Microsoft App Source, which proves also that our solution is fully compliant with the guidelines of Microsoft and fully embedded in Dynamics 365. Now, of course, being able to unburden our customers with an always compliant solution is not only about the pure software side of things. It's not only about coding. It's also about delivering them documented processes, making sure that both solution and methodology are being validated. So we have been investing a lot in 4 different domains. And the first domain is, of course, being able to offer an industry-rich, mature solution which is able to cover the industry-specific requirements of a pharma life science company.
And that's great, Dominic, and also very general. And I think that the question you're on is actually a very good one. I'm going to teach you a little bit on this very broad statements around the product. So can you tell me a little bit about what is this? What is the most important functionalities you have in that package? Where's the focus on development going for you and Cegica on this? And what do you do to capture that industry-specific contents of the package?
Yeah, what we did is we've translated all of the captured industry-specific requirements into what we call 5 different pillars, which are fully embedded and integrated in Dynamics 365. These 5 pillars, they range from regulatory compliance to low traceability, to pharmaceutical manufacturing, so really manufacturing requirements, up until quality management and inventory and material management. So it's really enriching the standard Dynamics 365 with really industry-specific functionality, which doesn't mean that this functionality was not already in place in Dynamics 365 and the standard, but we took it a step further. Typically, you are thinking about possibilities such as batch disposition codes and traceability. You are talking about weighing and dispensing functionalities. You are talking about the tour and time out of refrigeration, so temperature monitoring. So all of these very specific functionalities for pharma, life science, but also medical device companies, medtech companies, biotech companies.
So all very sophisticated and specific functionalities, which is specifically designed for this industry, obviously. And I think that's a good basis, for doing implementations and also capturing a lot of the process understanding that is needed actually within the ISV. But I'm just assuming, but maybe you can give me a perspective on that as well, Dominic, that more process understanding is probably required to do the actual implementation. So you have a good basis there. How much does that process understanding play in your actual implementations of Dynamics 365 FO alongside with your product there?
It's key. It's key to be able to offer a successful implementation. We have been investing, so not only in this software solution, ISV solution, but we have been mainly investing also in what we call our industry process library. This is a library that consists of about 500 fully documented business processes, which is the result of best practices we built throughout the time. These processes are documented on every single level and going from process domains until individual processes, sub-processes, until the very lowest level, let's call it the business scenario level. We extended the process documentation and description with all kinds of checklists per process, collecting really a comprehensive set of requirements per type of and level of process. And finally, we also visualized all of the process flows in really end-to-end scenarios by translating all of these documented processes in a business process modeling tool, which is called Mavim. So this really means that the entire environment, the end-to-end workflows have been fully documented so that we can really offer to our customers what we call an industry accelerator.
So I think it's safe to say that when you go in through the door at a life science client, you're not starting from scratch, at least. I think that's more than safe to say. And just out of curiosity, how many of these processes would be GXP related, and what kind of industry related business, industry specific business insights do you need to do all of this?
Yeah, so I've just been referring to this industry accelerator with this library, process library. So we fully documented 500 business processes in detail. About 200 of them have been identified as being GXP critical processes. And this allows us to never start a project from scratch. So if we talk to a customer or a new prospect or whatever, there is this framework which is already there. So it's very easy for us to understand and also to check the coverage of the expectations of our customers, their strategic objectives, what do they want to achieve in the future. And after having captured by an assessment their strategic goals they want to achieve, we can confirm quite easily to the customer what is the level and percentage of coverage by our standard solution. So we never start from scratch. We can really accelerate the project implementation by doing that.
And again, coming from the quality and compliance side of things, I know Henrik is going to touch a little bit out on this also on the validation, and this is a bit of maybe it's a nasty question for you, Dominic, but I hear a lot of CGCAS around the world saying, well, we can do this, and I'm sure you can. But the tricky question is always, so what if we were basically performing a GXP or a documentation audit at CGCAS? Would that be offered by you that we could do that in order to check CGCAS readiness?
Yes, of course, very important question. Now, important to know is we decided to go for a strategy which is based on two levels. So if we are talking about validation, then we are not only talking about a validated solution, software solution, which is GXP compliant, but we also invested a lot in validating our methodology. So the way we implement our project approach, and we made sure that for every single step and phase in a project, there are project deliverables that we offer as output to our customers, which these project deliverables are already fully aligned with validation deliverables. Validation deliverables which are typically used by an external software validation company such as Epista to do a quality audit and a GXP audit. And this saves also a lot of time when doing a project implementation and making sure that we stay fully aligned. Also when new service updates or new releases are being published by Microsoft.
Thank you, Dominic. It's not often that we hear those types of responses to that specific question, so I'm very pleased to hear that. And also, I'm sure that if we look into the context of what we do on this webinar and trying to investigate the process understanding, the accelerators, I think we have a very good view that Microsoft is providing a platform with standard functionality that has been done under okay circumstances from a life science perspective. I think Dominic talking about the ISV accelerator thing, so focusing even more on best practices and standard functionality specific to life science companies, and then also on the process understanding there, the things you were talking about in Marvin. I think it gives a very good picture of two of the 4 points we have in the Epista way of thinking when we talk about always compliant. However, there are two small bits missing, Henrik. I'm not sure if you understand where I'm coming from, because being with my background, I always find it very interesting to hear about not only technology and best practices, but also what do we do in validation and maybe equally important, how do we maintain that validated state of a cloud system after that? So Henrik, I think you feel like me that we see this adoption of the cloud in life science. We've heard Microsoft, we've heard CGCAS talk about the beauty of it. And then we normally are the people that basically, tear the dreams apart because we say, well, that needs to be validated. And those technology people, they just, all the light in their eyes basically go out when we say that. But looking at this in a very overall context, looking at validation, what are the differences we see from a validation standpoint now? And what is important to consider when we move from old on-site, on-prem installations and then onto the cloud? Could you give me some perspectives on that?
Yeah, I think before I sort of directly answer your question, I would like to sort of remind ourselves why are we moving to the cloud, right? We want to have better business support. We want to improve our efficiency and take advantage of some of the technologies that both Jesper and Dominic provides us with, right? And that means that we will also face more changes, more adoption. So historically, we've often seen that change is a bad thing, right? It's a risk. It takes time. It takes effort. So I think the first thing I would like to talk to is actually sort of more like on an organizational side or stakeholder side, because the way we see it, we are looking into 4 different types of stakeholders, 3 of them internal and 1 external. So we come from a QA background, right? But in this case, it's business drive, typically buying the system and IT supporting, and then we have the QA on the inside. And then the partner comes in alongside with Microsoft or with Cigica. And all of these 4 different stakeholders, we often see that they come with different terminologies, at least different objectives, different goals for what they want to achieve with this, right? So what we often see is basically 2 timelines. We often see different system support. We see a lot of manual work trying to combine these different stakeholders because they come from different standpoints or different backgrounds. So our first concern is basically, in order to drive efficient changes and being able to maintain validated state, we need to combine these. We need to create a common ground. Yeah. So we need to be aligned on how do we document, how do we test, how do we control all of these tools that Jesper and Dominic are concerned with, right? And basically thinking about it, I think one of the key drivers for why I think Microsoft and Cigica, or at least perceived from the outside, has been successful and more successful in the pharma industry is because Microsoft had to provide these tools in a very structured way. So the operating procedures for operating the clouds, the tools supporting it, the documentation supporting it across many industries, but specifically also for pharma, they just have to be in place. So as you said in the beginning, Klaus, when adopting to the cloud, a lot of things are just provided to us. Then Dominic and other partners comes in and they are able to actually add content and add best practices, which we can leverage. So basically, in order to achieve better functionality for the business, meaning more rapid changes, more flexibility, we want to adopt these tools. We want to adopt this documentation. We want to reuse it instead of trying to rewrite everything as we've seen in the past, right? We've basically seen 2 separate projects, one on the implementation side and one on the documentation / validation side. So we want to bring all of this together and bring common ground. So I think the missing part here is the last thing, QA, right? Sometimes we see them come in very late with their own systems. So basically, we want to align all of these new technologies, these processes, these tools, these best practices with what we have already. So we have to merge that with what we see with our customers. We always have to look into the quality management system, the current SOPs, because we need to adopt these new ways of working and these new tools and create that common ground. And I think basically that is sort of the first thing that we need to do. We need to have all stakeholders aligned. We need one plan, and we need that not only for the project, but also for the operational phase, right? So that was sort of a little different take on it. But from our side, I think this is very important that we see this organization change management as part of these projects.
And I really like your take on that, Henrik, not only due to the stakeholders you were already mentioning, but also because of us, because we are always the people that are saying no to everything. And then if we get to that common ground, and this, the common way of doing things, we do not get to be the angry people, but more like working with the project rather than trying to stop everything. So I really follow you on that. But it was also a very general statement, and I'm not going to let you go with or get away with that. So also I need to understand. So what does this concretely mean, Henrik? So going with maybe a little bit more into the validation, the engine room. So what do we have to consider then in context of the actual validation? How do we overcome that on an overall level?
Yeah, so as I think you said in the beginning, the projects are basically preparation for operation. Sorry, I have a cold. So basically what we're using the project for is aligning all of these, all of our documentation and our procedures for the coming changes, right? And I think what has sometimes been cumbersome in the older days and trying to maintain is basically the traceability, right? If we take the V model, right, we have all the requirements, the specifications, everything on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side we have the testing, right? And in the middle we have some kind of traceability. I think Excel has been used a few times in that to control this, right? So
one or two.
Yeah. So if we want to speed up the process of being able to actually handle these changes, we're not moving away from the V model. We are just suggesting a slightly different focus, because we are suggesting that instead of looking at requirements first, we might start, so our focal point might be processes. Obviously, the traceability needs to be there. We need the trace to the requirements. We need the trace to our specification. We need the trace to the test. But if we focus in on the business processes, we have common ground again to talk from. A business user does not think, I need this requirement. He's thinking about changing a process, right? He needs to be more efficient in what he's doing. I'm sorry, Jesper, but Microsoft does not provide the luxury of actually relating a release note to a URS somewhere, right? So how do we map the two? How do we actually analyze what is the impact of a change? We do that through a process. So that's sort of the first thing that we would like to do. The second thing is that we need to be smart about how we do our risk assessments, right? So we like to think of it very simple. So basically dividing it into GXP and non-GXP, right? Because that drives a lot of stuff. And when we are when we have the division, on the other hand side, we would like to think of it whether this is a fit for the application or a gap, because all of that matrix basically drives how we specify, how we test, the amount of control that we need to perform on a specific change, and subsequently basically also how we are able to release anything, right? Because we also need to make sure that we have stuff that we have pre-approved, so release stuff that can handle, because we know it's pre-approved and it's easy for us to handle. So I think a slight change of mindset here. I know many of our customers are doing this already, but also we also meet a lot of sort of traditional thinking that we start with the URS and then we work our way down to through the V model, and it doesn't relate very well when Jesper says agile, right? Difficult.
Oh, but I can see in front of me here, so I can definitely get the view, Henrik, of Dominic's 500 processes, in a library where we denote them, are they being GXP or non-GXP, and I can also see if we can denote them whether are they fits or are they gaps, and we can upfront basic relate it and see how much test do we do on each of those 4 categories, and then again when we get into the change and configuration situation, how much are we going to test it depending on where that specific change is relating to a process. So I think it's a very strong way of controlling the traceability.
And again, when we're working with partners like Sejeka, right, we are just provided with so much documentation, so we don't have to invent everything ourselves, right? Makes everything less effort, less risk, and faster.
But that brings me to my next question, Henrik. So again, you're not going to get away too easy here. So you're talking a lot about the vendor, and quite honestly, what requirements do you think we should, from a validation standpoint, should be putting on those vendors? Now I know that Dominic is happy to host a GXP audit at least, but what do we need to be aware of on the vendor / implementation side?
Yeah, so basically we think of in 2 dimensions, right? Because Microsoft develops the software and operates the system. So we need a strategy for how we qualify Microsoft. we've been doing that for a long time in Epista. Jesper revealed that many of the big pharma out there has already done that, so we know that's possible. It's basically a standard service for us, right? To do that qualification of Microsoft. When it comes to the implementation partner, which is often the case, it's rarely Microsoft implementing themselves. It's companies like Cetica. It's a broader picture, right? So typically they don't have quality management systems as we know it in our industry, right? They have methodologies and they may have some tools supporting them. And basically, in order for us to take all the good practices that they bring to the table and the tools and the documentation, we need to qualify the partner. So what we typically recommend is a separate quality plan, basically including the best practices of the partner and inserting the controls needed so that we verify that we are in control with both for the project implementation, but also for the operation of the system. So it's a two-way dimension, and obviously, it's nice to hear from Dominic that we are welcome. It makes everything easier, right? When you're ready for this.
He doesn't seem like he's regretting his remark. I can see he's still smiling, so it's not too bad. But then again, we are hammering a lot on Dominic and maybe also a little bit on Jesper, Henrik. But I think that there's one question that and it's going to be my last one for today, which basically is more around the life science companies themselves, you know, so our customers and this new way of thinking in terms of cloud platform, continuous updates, etc. On a very short note, how do we see our clients, or how do we recommend our clients basically prepare for this?
Yeah, obviously we need to consider all the stuff that we already discussed, right? Choosing the right system, the right implementation partner, but all that. But what we often see and is that we are so focused with implementation of the new solution, right? Business drives this; they want to be more efficient, right? And all this operational stuff, we sometimes kind of forget it until late. So basically, our recommendation here is for our customers is start focusing on operation as soon as possible. Make sure that you have your operating procedures in place, so you know how to use the tools from Microsoft, you know how to work with partners like Cetica, and be very sure that you have your internal positioning right, so you have the right resources where you need those controls. And I think most of our clients should be aware that they will need someone like Cetica to support them going forward, because there are so many very specific tasks that we do, on some regular basis, but with a very limited time. But you need the skill set, so you cannot maintain that capability internally. So set up an operational agreement, basically, right? So the Rocky is there, so you know who does what once we're into operation. And remember to include QA in this.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, what you're saying is what we usually like to see, right? That is getting the control in place. That is what compliance is all about. So I'm sure that echoes a lot that we have been talking about through many years, basically. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your different perspectives, the three-dimensional perspectives on always compliant. I think a very good discussion here, and I think that we were basically taking a couple of different cuts on this challenge. So talking about the process understanding and process knowledge, both on the platform from you, Jesper, talking about the vision and the strategy for Microsoft on life science, the functionalities in place and what is really important. From you, Dominic, talking about the process, knowledge that we need to have to do the actual implementations, but also about accelerators and best practices to do these implementations of Dynamics 365. So very well indeed, and also you, Henrik, talking about the validation and maintaining the validated state after that. So all in all, I think that we have those three perspectives, and guys, this was exactly what I wanted to achieve. So thank you very much for this. So I think we are back from the recorded event, and I hope that I will be able to see Jesper, Dominic, and Henrik joining in for for taking the Q&As. I see them on my screen at least. So Jesper, do we have sound with you?
Yes, we have.
That sounds good. You had me again. I was nervous for a minute there. Dominic, what about you? You are muted. Thanks, Dominic.
Should be fine now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hear you loud and clear. I think we had
Okay.
to just rehearse a little bit on this, going from the recorded webinar, then on to being live after that. So that was one presentation or one discussion we had the other day, and now we have basically we have broadcasted this event live, and now we have some Q&A that we've been trying to basically capture while we were going through the webinar. And I will put my reading glasses on so that I'm capable of reading it. So I guess the first group of questions we have regarding this webinar is about, let's say, the documentation. Where do we get information from Microsoft and also from the partners? And I have questions around the functionality. So how are Microsoft ERP applications different from other commercial available product? I also have a question around automatic deployment, and Jesper, in general, looking at documentation of this nature from Microsoft, any hints, tricks, or tips on how to get information in general?
Yes, every single part of our third-party audits, like the Deloitte on the system and organization controls, the SOC reports, ISO, high trust, and the plus 100 certificate that is run in our audit team across all the platforms are available on the Microsoft Trust Center. So the Microsoft Trust Center is the sort of information where you can get insights into the half-year audit and third-party audits that are running. We are not asking the questions or anything like that in the SOC reports. So that is a source for the vendor assessments that can be used. Also, the information on the docs and learning sites are where the guides and best practices are located.
So there's a big resource there for let's say for Q&As from different people if they would want to have more information on functionality and how we basically handle the different things.
And I would also say on the Trust Center, there's also the source for how to maintain the secure development lifecycle practice that I also talked about in the webinar. Treating it like code and how to manage code as a compliant theme, and also the information on the privacy aspects of. I've seen certain concerns related to data and privacy, and the aspects and road Microsoft is taking on that perspective is also on the Microsoft Trust Center.
And then there are also questions around there regarding the ISV side of things that you were basically mentioning, Dominic, during the webinar. First and foremost, just for completeness, what does ISV mean, and what is that?
Yeah, we tend to forget that we're always using a lot of terminology, But ISV stands for Independent Software Vendor. So it means that we have been deploying and developing a solution which is entirely embedded on Dynamics 365, but which has been approved and validated by Microsoft, and therefore also being publicly available on Microsoft's portal, which is called Microsoft App Source. So it's a set of functionalities which is available on the market and fully embedded on Dynamics 365 F&O.
And if we repeat the question that we had to Jesper around getting information about functionality and stuff like that, where do we find that information available?
Well, the Microsoft portal, so App Source, is open to everything who is interested. You can simply click on the logo of the solution itself. You can look upon descriptions of the solution. You find the specifications all listed there. So that's the first entry into a solution, an ISV solution. And if you need more detailed information, you can always reach out to Microsoft, who will make sure that he will bring the customer or the prospect into contact with the ISV solution provider, in this case for the pharma solution, Cegica, for example.
So questions regarding, for instance, the Microsoft plan to set an ISV as a graphical scheduler or other functionality, then that would be the source to understand what Microsoft and the ISV thinking is around that, I'm assuming. Yes.
Exactly. And you know, Jesper already referred to that also in his part of the presentation of the webinar. There is a very strong ecosystem, you know, between Microsoft and the implementation partner. On every project we implement worldwide, there is a very strong relationship with the local Microsoft teams and account teams. Cegica is also eligible, you know, to apply for fast track teams and support from Microsoft, so that they are also directly possibly involved to perform, for example, some kind of quality audit on the solution design and build phase of a project, etc. So this is very well settled. We're doing this for 20 years. So I think that's one of the strengths of that ecosystem of Microsoft together with its partners worldwide.
So maybe that's also part of the answer of another question we have here, which is about the automatic deployment. And I think what's motivating this is that all the validation required when we see new updates. So one participant here asking, how do we know if we are registered as a pharma company so that we kind of can opt out for these new updates? But I guess it's the same. It's the Microsoft customer team and the different documentation we have around that. Jesper's nodding as well.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So every customer can always reach out to his local Microsoft team to get that information, to make sure that they are registered as a pharma customer, etc. Yeah.
Cool. We have one, and I think it's going to be the last question we can actually handle here. Is the question is, what happens if you need customer development on D365 in relationship to validation approach? And I guess Henrik, you will agree with me when I say that, yeah, if we do custom development, that's just another risk group in the validation strategy. So subjected to more tests, obviously, if it's custom developed, and that still needs to be handled as part of the change and release management process as that specific risk item. So I think that answers question as well.
Also referring back to what we said with the matrix we had with GXP, non-GXP, and fit gap. This is perhaps GXP and a gap. Then we just need different controls. We talk a lot about, or often recommend doing some automatic testing on that specific place in the matrix, because that eases the burden of having to repeat your test every time, right? So that's sort of some part of the stuff that we develop when we introduce the validation plan with the customer. How do we control it?
Guys, thank you very much for helping me out with this webinar. Not only the pre-recording we did last week, but also attending here today, and you, Dominic, even from the airport. So thank you very, very much for that. We did answer some of the questions, but if you still have questions to ask, then please don't hesitate to write the questions to us, and we will follow up with you via email, so that we make sure that we get all questions addressed with good and true answers. On behalf of the four of us, guys, I hope that you agree with me to say thank you for people attending this webinar. It was a true pleasure, and take care, all of you.